Welcome everybody to another event, virtual event hosted by the Chicago Brewseum. My name is Liz Garibay. I'm the founder and executive director of the Brewseum. I'm excited to welcome you all this evening for a conversation that has been seemingly happening for a long time, to be honest. First, some order of business. We are going to mute everyone and turn videos off at some point here. Lucas, the mastermind, the wizard behind the curtain, is going to help us do some of that. Okay, so again, welcome everybody. I'm Liz. I'm going to begin by introducing our two other guests, if you will, for this conversation, which again, I've been very excited about for a long time. Joining us from the Art Institute of Chicago is Gloria Groom, who is the chair of European Painting and Sculpture of the Art Institute of Chicago and is the David and Mary Winton Green Curator. And Gabriel Magliaro, who is the co-founder of Half Acre Beer Company, a good friend and someone who also serves on our board. So Gabriel and Gloria and I are going to chat about a handful of different things and of course about beer. And again, ask your questions, please, in the chat room if you're on Zoom. If you are on Facebook, go ahead and ask your questions into the comment section, and we will be sure to take a look at those and include them during the Q&A portion of this. So for those of you who don't know about the Chicago Brewseum, and I welcome you. For those of you who do, I welcome you back. We are the country's first nonprofit museum dedicated to telling the global story of beer. It is definitely my work and my belief that beer has contributed to the world's history and society and culture in various ways. And tonight we're going to focus on how that has impacted the art world and Chicago history and the beer industry. And so that's what we do. We tell those stories. And one day we hope to have our own physical space. And in the meantime, we've been hosting a lot of these different conversations and these different collaborations. Now with that, one thing I'd like to talk about right away is why we're all here, and that is because of this beer and this collaboration. And one of the ways that we have also tried to tell the story of beer is through beer itself. We've all heard about these great beer collabs between two breweries, and we all get excited, right? There's a nice warm and fuzzy feeling when two breweries come together to make something delicious, and we all rush out to get it. And personally, I, being a beer geek, am one of those people as well. And it always made me wonder why museums really don't do that as often as I think we should. And so we started engaging in these beer collaborations where we would include one or two beer makers and another cultural organization so that it is a 3 or 4 way collaboration. And the whole idea was to have that beer be the vehicle, not only for partnerships, but also to tell these important and sometimes unknown stories. And so the Stacks of Wheat beer is one of the 7 now beers that we have done with that mission behind it. So first, Gloria and Gabriel, thank you again for being here and for joining us. Cheers to you too.
Cheers. Thank you.
That's also my way to pause and be able to take a sip. Before we actually start getting into beer itself, one thing that I get asked constantly, and I think we all get asked constantly right now, is how are you, how is Half Acre, how is the Art Institute managing right now with what I think is actually an interesting period, right? We're almost transitioning back into the norm a little bit, which is causing sort of other questions and concerns, and just wanted to pick your brains a little bit about what's going on there.
Okay, I'll start. The Art Institute is going to be ready to open the 30th of July, and the exhibition that we'll be talking about is going to open the 3rd of September. So everything's been pushed back about 3 months, but and it will be, as everything will be, in a much modified, different way of experiencing the museum than what you did up to March 13th when we kind of went dark. So we've been managing, I think. It's, you know, it's a product that needs to be seen and experienced, and Zoom, as much as I love it and as exciting as it is to see lots of paintings and things online, it's not the same.
Sure.
Um, yeah, so we fortunately have continued making beer through this entire period. All the while, we've redesigned and re-understood our business to bend to the circumstances, and yeah, it's been a pretty wild period for us, and we've had to yeah, learn how to be brewers inside of a pandemic, and how to work alongside one another yet distance from one another, um, and learn how the world responds to beer during a you know, a very unique circumstance. So it's, you know, it was a stressful period. It has been a stressful period, but all things considered, feel very fortunate that we've been able to continue, in a lot of ways thrive, and continue being Half Acre Beer Company.
Right. And that, you know, as different as, you know, our missions might be and some of the things that we actually produce, that's always that common denominator, right? Another way that we're all connected in this. And I think that's a great segue into this amazing beer that many of us are drinking tonight. And I actually want to start, it's called Stacks of Wheat, of course, one of the paintings by Claude Monet. And the collaboration happened. We'll get into the nitty gritty of the collaboration. But first, I'm wondering, Gloria, if you could tell us a little bit about the exhibition itself, Monet in Chicago.
Yeah, sure. So luckily it's an exhibition that is very much the city of Chicago, you know, so it's about Claude Monet and why he's in our DNA and why he's so important. So we have 33 paintings, we have 13 works on paper, and to join with that, 34 paintings from private collectors who are in Chicagoland. So it's an exhibition that is very much about the city after the fire, rebuilding. When Monet first comes to Chicago, it's like in the 1880s, they start showing him here, but it was the Columbian World's Fair that really galvanized the city to buy modern art. And we were the first city to give him an exhibition, the first art institution to give him an exhibition in 1895. And we were the first to buy a Monet in American institutions. And since then, his popularity has never decreased. And the proof is the lenders to the exhibition, some of whom are from families from the 1890s that still own Monets, and some have owned Monets since last year. So it's a kind of a wonderful thing to reopen with this, because it is so much about Chicago, and we want to focus on that. So it's, yeah.
So how many pieces total will be in the show?
So 34 and 34, so that's 68, and then plus 15 works on paper, whatever that is what we're going to have. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Significant.
Yeah, it is. And it's so funny because we just had a kind of a pep rally for it right before we shut down. And that's when I met the people at Half Acres, and it was like, we were all excited.
Yeah.
And now I wonder, is this going to be available when we have the exhibition, which opens in September, or will it be all drunk up by then? I don't know. I can still find it at Vinny's.
We'll have to get to that in a minute with Gabriel there. Real quick question for you, as someone who is very much entrenched in Chicago history and, you know, just enamored by it, we often have these names that pop up a lot, right? And for anyone who's interested in Chicago history, a pair of names that repeatedly come up are Bertha and Potter Palmer, right?
Yeah.
And these two were late 19th century, you know, upper crust, collecting things, and they were some of the first to actually pick up Stacks of Wheat and other of his paintings. When that happened, did that really sort of fuel this fire for other people starting to collect his works in the city?
Yes, absolutely. Because, you know, they rebuilt the hotel, which they had just built. Then it came down with the fire, and he rebuilds the first fireproof hotel. It's the first of everything. And I think it's the only hotel from that period that's still standing. So, and he was a huge real estate magnate. And he worked with Marshall Field and the whole retail stores. And so whatever they did was important. and she became really the hostess for the city during the the World's Fair in 1893, because she was in charge of the women's building, but she was also very much the first collector, the big time collector. I mean, she bought in less than 2 years, she had bought 5 stacks of wheat that had just been painted. So it's just like something, like just off the easel. Nobody else was really understanding what the deal was with the series paintings. So she was incredibly important. And during the fair, all of these people from all over the world, from Chicago, but also from all over the world, would go to see her castle on Lakeshore Drive, and they would see her picture gallery where she had the Impressionists they were already recognized in America, but they weren't considered real art yet by the middle class. It was still kind of the intelligentsia that was getting it.
So was Bertha did she just have a knack for knowing what was going to be big, or was she just genuinely attracted to its beauty? Is there something about why she was pursuing some of his work?
I think I think Chicago's in a unique position because we're not New York, we're not Boston. They were buying Raphael, they were buying old masters. Chicago started in the 1870s, and we restarted. And so for her, it was modern art. She didn't need art history. And I think it was, she was consulting other people, of course, but she also loved Paris. And once she met Monet's dealer and met Monet in 1892, it was kind of like she got him, and the cachet of having Monet in your pocket, so to speak, was a big deal. And so she, it's funny because she bought most of her paintings in that 3-year period around before and right after the Columbian World's Fair. And then she kind of didn't.
I love that you put it in the context of it was just a very Chicago thing to do, right? Because that's exactly the kind of people we are. I'm just going to go for it, see what happens.
Fields of wheat, that's the kind of thing she was seeing.
I love it. Before we get into this beer, I'm wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit, since we're talking about Bertha, about stacks of wheat in the series, and why it's kind of so important.
Do you mind if I share my screen for a second, or is that?
Not at all.
Is that okay? Okay. This makes it a little bit easier. I'm always with the screen. All right. Okay. Whoops. I didn't want to do that. Okay. Let's go back.
Get back to that one.
Back. Okay. So this is kind of a breakdown. You were asking me about the exhibition, and I couldn't do the math right then, but that's kind of you can see that. And this is one that she bought. She returned it. And then it was eventually bought again by the family, and this was given to us in 1985 by the family. So this is one that was left in her collection. But she gave us in 1922, we inherited one. So we were the first museum to have the grain stack. So we have 6. And, he did 27. He showed 15 at this exhibition that she attended in 1891, and from which she bought 2, and then she bought 3 more by the end of the year. So this was, when we think about this now with Warhol and everything, this was incredibly new. No artist had worked on the same subject, almost the same format again and again. Now it seems, it was like the very first time. And we have 6, so I'm showing you 5 here, but you can get the sense of what they do when you see them immersed, and how important that was to contemporary artists.
Was that the use of color in the way he did this series? It's sort of, playing with the different time of day and the different sort of sunlight. Was that also something that was a little bit new?
Yeah, and I mean, think of this as these are sort of 16 to 18 foot high stacks, and they're adjacent to his property at Giverny, where he ends up in the last 26 years of his life when he buys the property. And so it's like a nothing subject. This is the most descriptive. Most of them are more abstract. This is one that he probably did first, because you can see behind the farmhouses. And the other ones are much more about just atmosphere. And that's what he wanted. He wanted that envelope of the atmosphere. So he would go out and work on these, but then he'd bring them back in his studio and work on them as an ensemble, which is how he exhibits them as, so that it wouldn't be necessarily what he saw. And we're figuring out he made lots of changes, but rather how they work together. So that was a new concept too, that the idea that they're going to be seen as a kind of progression.
I also think it's interesting and curious that Bertha returned it.
She did. You know, it's funny. She, if you look at the account books, she would return and then rebuy it a year later. But it was almost like the policy that her husband innovated at Marshall Field's at the first dry goods store, which was the return policy. No one had ever allowed that before, and so it was kind of like she took that idea from her husband and brought it to her art line.
Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. It's definitely such an eye-catching series. When you go into the gallery, it's such a presence, and certainly one that I think many Chicagoans adore and certainly gravitate to. So when I heard about the exhibition last year from actually Lucas, he and I had been chatting about a few Brewseum things, and this idea for a beer emerged from our conversations, and immediately I knew that the only partner for this whole effort, the only beer partner for this whole effort, was going to be Half Acre. And I had a few reasons for that. They're certainly rooted in art. They're certainly rooted in craft. And I will turn to Gabriel now to tell us a little bit about your involvement in the partnership and your inspiration for the beer, and then of course this groovy label design, because it's really quite also eye-catching, if you will.
Sure. Well, you know, I have a history both with you, Liz. We go back a ways, and from the earliest days of our brewery, and I don't know, 07, 2006, 7, 8, in that range. I also attended the School of the Art Institute and graduated from that school, and spent many days of my education inside of the museum. And so this all coalesced pretty nicely for me. We are very invested in the creative process as brewers, of course, but also as people that create imagery and attach it to beer. This one, we can't take a lot of credit for it, because I think, I can't say this for certain, but I think this is the first beer in history to feature a significant piece of art of this stature. So I couldn't be any more honored, honestly, to have his work on this can, and for all these things to connect inside of one thing that's attached to our brewery. These paintings, you know, pretty much every single Monet painting feels like a place you want to consume beer. I mean, it's all these beautiful settings washed in light, and you know, all these seemingly lush experiences. And I think that's sort of in my mind where I see beer being enjoyed most. So when you came to us talking about the potential of this, I was excited on a lot of levels, and I couldn't be more pleased the way it all came together, minus the pandemic and the fact that we couldn't be enjoying more of this beer in person, and for it to coincide with the exhibition itself. So nobody saw this coming, but here we are. Wheat beer also has such a rich tradition going back many years, from Belgium and in Bavaria, today it exists as probably craft beer's largest contributor to volume. So much wheat beer is consumed under the craft beer heading. Probably why I enjoy it and why I think it's great as a seasonal experience. They're just very rich in texture, rich in flavor. It's always a direct connection to the ingredients themselves. I think wheat itself comes through. It's very apparent in the drinking experience, which I think lends itself or is able to sort of hold up a name like Stacks of Wheat. I think that was important for that wheat character to come through as noticeably as it does. And then in most wheat beers, hops, which are this, these beautiful plants, many of which grow in those same areas in Europe, are usually a more subtle aspect of a wheat beer recipe. And this beer follows suit with that, with some European hops, one American hop being Centennial. But overall, it's a pretty traditional, honest expression of a classic wheat beer. So I think, we didn't want to get too far out with this, and we wanted to hopefully marry the historic nature of these paintings and the historic nature of this beer style.
Well, let me tell you, you guys, I really appreciate your enthusiasm to be a part of this. When you approach someone with an idea and there's no hesitation, that's always exciting, right? And then your thoughtfulness and approach to making the beer, and then of course the label is also incredibly visible. So I mean, I'm definitely a big fan, and I appreciate you guys going in full steam ahead with this.
Oh, well, an honor. I mean, it's the Art Institute really that deserves the nod here, and yeah, I mean, so much significance goes along with the Art Institute as an institution, but these bodies of work are immense, and we're a small brewing company in a cool city, and we're happy to be here, and but really that's the thing that's really being celebrated right now.
Yeah, for me, this was an interesting collaboration too, because it's so rooted in Chicago. There's so many overlapping things that we can actually discuss about Monet and Impressionism and museums and the Art Institute and beer and industry and innovation, and we'll get to a few of those things in a little bit. But certainly the fact, Gabriel, that you attended the School of the Art Institute was such a powerful connector to begin with. And when I was learning from colleagues at the Art Institute about the exhibition and about Monet and some of these works of art that were in there, and thinking about Half Acre's place in Chicago modern beer history, it was all just very powerful connectors about the presence of specific people and the way they pushed forward specific movements, right? So on one side, you have the Palmers, you have the Art Institute, you have Monet, driving forces behind art that is just, of course, very local and helping the cultural world here, but certainly having an effect globally. And Half Acre, for me, and I think for many other people, you guys were one of the first ones on the scene here in the 2000s. And certainly you're making not just a local, regional, national impact, it's also global. So there's so many parallels to this story and so many parallels to the beer that personally excites me when I see it, when I drink it. Again, the only sad part is that I can't actually have it somewhere near the Art Institute or in the Art Institute, but that would never happen because you're not allowed to drink in galleries, right? But hopefully we'll change that in the future. Back to Gloria real quick. So it's my understanding that Monet himself was not actually a beer drinker. right?
I
Am
don't
I
think
right?
so. I don't think there's any evidence. And we know he was a wine drinker, but no, I don't think so. I I think beer was mostly drunk publicly. You know, I think it was something that was in a keg or some kind of a larger receptacle, whereas wine was, you know, the bouteille de vin, which is, and today is Bastille Day, so we should all actually be having both.
That's not a
Yeah.
coincidence, by the way, everybody. Um, so I want to kind of talk a little bit about that and drinking in the Impressionist world overall, because one of my actual favorite paintings is not a Monet, it's a Van Gogh, and it's called The Drinkers, right?
Oh, I've got that. You want me to show it?
Sure. And I'm just, yeah, I'm wondering if maybe you can tell us a little bit about the representation of beer, wine, drinking culture as a whole, and impressionist art overall, and sort of what that's telling us a little bit about 19th century life in France or in other places.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So in the 1870s, which is really when the Impressionists, when they get called Impressionists, so that's where it starts. Any kind of alcohol consumption by women, and the Impressionists, as you know, love to paint women, was considered, you know, it caused concern because there were strict rules about it. And it was a very repressive regime. But after the Commune in about 1877, you get a better government that allows more freedom of activities. But let me just show you a couple, because I'm always working with slides, so I don't know how to talk without images. So this is Manet, and what women on their own drinking was suspect. This is a barmaid. Both these paintings are barmaids. So, but you see the woman is not with the man. So what Manet is just amazing able to do, he doesn't moralize, but he leaves you in this kind of zone of ambiguity. But you can see the beer, and so, you know, you've got the working woman who's serving beer, but you also have the working woman who's taking a beer. And when I was a barmaid, we weren't allowed to drink on the job, but he's showing, you know, she's just like, okay, well, and smoking was right up there with alcohol as a no-no. I mean, it was just something women weren't supposed to do. It meant that you were lower class. It meant that you were probably selling yourself. I mean, it was really a kind of a code for a woman of easy virtue. So I love these paintings for that. But then, as I said, when women are together and they're not alone, or if they're with a man, then drinking, and especially beer drinking, which was associated with kind of not the higher class, but the middle class, it was okay. It was socialization. It was a neutral zone. So here he's showing you two women out, you know, and that was safe. Our painting, which I think is one of the great Manet paintings in general, but certainly my favorite at the Art Institute, which you probably saw in the Manet exhibition we just did last summer. So she's all alone, but it's very ambiguous. So and what makes it so interesting is that, as I said, public spaces for beer, but we now know that she was actually in front of a painting by Manet that he did the summer before, because by now he couldn't leave his studio because he had lots of issues from syphilis. So he's setting this up as if it's a bar, but it's not a bar. It's him in his studio. There's a watering can behind her head that's in the painting of the garden that he did the summer before. So, but beer, you know, here she is. And then the great beer drinking of all times, of course, is the bar at the Folies Bergère, his last important painting before he dies the following year. And there you see something that's incredible, because it's the Bass beer logo. It's the first trademark ever to be shown in art of a beer. And it's a British beer that still exists. So you've got these Bass beer bottles, and that's, and she's a server. And again, it's very ambiguous. This whole painting is all about ambiguity in space, ambiguity in morale, ambiguity in who's selling what. Yeah. So yeah, but then I love this painting. Can you see the right-hand corner? This is the period of Toulouse-Lautrec. So this is one of Lautrec's best friends. And she's, I guess it's been cropped, but there's a little table with a beer, and she's walking by. And again, these women look like they're on the prowl, and beer is part of that. It's part of that night activity for single women. And here's the one you love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I think it's been cropped. I did this really quickly. I think it got kind of cropped. Nadine's going to laugh at me, and so is Lucas. But anyway, you can barely see that little baby down there. That's why it seems to be cropped. But it's the 4 ages of man. And, you know, they're starting with the milk. The baby's drinking milk, and then it goes up, and then you get beer, and then you get, at the end, you're getting coffee. You know, you're getting some kind of a hot drink. And it comes from a caricature, a Daumier caricature. And there you can really see the baby. So they're all drinking liquid, and beer, of course, is the middle-aged.
There's a lot of like chatter amongst the nerds who look at drinking and art and things with this particular painting, that it's very much influenced by Van Gogh's time spent with absinthe.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about that?
Do you think the guy on the right is drinking absinthe? It kind of looks like, I should have looked this up. You know, Van Gogh was of his time, and he was hanging out with people who drank much stronger beverages. And I should say that beer was much better for women to drink beer than strong alcohol. That was really taboo. So beer was if you have to drink, you should drink beer. Yeah, he was hanging out with not as bad as Toulouse-Lautrec, who really did drink absinthe every night. But yes, he was drinking wormwood, which was causing people to lose their minds. Sorry, I have my dog jumping around here. So yeah. But he wasn't, Van Gogh did very few cafe pictures when you think about it. I mean, he's not an urban artist. He's an artist who spends 1 year and a half in Paris, very little time in a cafe, the Tabarin and a couple of others. And then he's off to Arles and Auvers. And so, you don't really get that sense of cafe society, which is what the Impressionists were so focused on.
All of these paintings.
This is the grain stack urban, this is
yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely see all of the smokestacks in the background compared to what Monet is doing, and this idyllic fields with haystacks. And also, by the way, I didn't realize that was the very first trademark shown in art, because the Basque red triangle is actually the first trademark ever.
Yeah.
So
really? Okay.
There's 2 firsts for us. See, art and beer makes sense. We should talk about this more often. Gabriel, so for me, some of this intersection is connected to the fact that all of this important artwork is happening in the mid to late 19th century, right? It's the beginning of some of these various circles of people coming together to paint, to drink, right? Creativity is happening. And in Chicago, certainly this is the beginning of the beer industry, right? We start having German immigrants come through, and everyone has been drinking mostly historically British beers, ales, and stouts and porters. And it's not until we get the arrival of lager yeast that we start getting lager beer in the 1850s and beyond. And after that, it sort of just starts to just boom, and certainly does boom even more so post-fire and into the 1893 World's Fair. And we'll get to some more of that in a minute. But Gabriel, I'm wondering, as Gloria is talking about a lot of these different cultures and women and beer, right? And this beer that you made, a wheat ale, these are some traditions that go back to France too, that you were talking about earlier, right? I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about maybe some of that.
That period of time in drinking beer, or
anything that you think makes sense to you.
Well, I mean, I guess when I see all these, what I think about is sort of the beer being this equalizer, this ingredient of a convivial atmosphere, and I think that's something that has been a constant throughout time, and a lot of what pulled me toward beer was those idyllic European settings where you have open air environments or large groups of people, all ages, coming together to enjoy beer and to pick apart the world. And I think that's kind of what's beautiful about the experience that surrounds beer. And you know, whatever cultural perfection that maybe we all strive for day in, day out, there's a great moment that I think beer easily introduces, where people drop down a gear and begin to enjoy each other in a much more familiar and easygoing way. And whether that's 1890 or 1990 or 2020, that is the thing for me as a beer maker, and what we're trying to, I think, introduce into the world, is that equalizing nature and that easygoing setting that hopefully we can all appeal to.
Yeah, you know, and I think that that's a very important point, and I think you've hit the nail on the head, because a lot of these beers, right, in France during this time period are made for farmhands, right? They're drinking farmhouse ales or kinds of wheat beer. And so this idea of beer being an equalizer, I think, is incredibly important. And Gloria, I'm sure that you've heard this before, but I feel that when people start looking at art, or especially important time periods like the Impressionists or certain people, it can be really intimidating for a lot of folks, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's like, I don't know anything of that. I'm just, you know, over here doing my thing, and I'm just, it's not, I don't get it. I don't want to get it. It's not my thing. But really, all of these people are doing the same thing, right? Drinking that beer, going to work, getting up. And so that's the way I look at a lot of these things and these connections.
Yeah. I mean, this is, well, we can't do it now. We can't be that close, but you know, in a couple of years, we're there.
Right. So back to beer in Chicago a little bit, that I think is really important, and again, is sort of a tie to the story and to Monet and the Impressionists, is that there's so much happening during throughout the world during this time. And in Chicago, post-fire, the beer industry is growing like mad. There are beer makers who are innovators, not just in their industry, but they're also pushing other industries to help them be better. Ice, you know, the creation of ice makers or refrigerated rail cars, helping transportation, the movement of goods and people, certainly impacting the beer industry and Chicago as a whole. And it's curious to me how the one event that I think is a perfect intersection of all of this is the 1893 World's Fair, right? And you've mentioned that this is the point in time when you think Monet really catapulted locally.
Mhm.
And it's certainly the time that the local beer makers were, for the first time, really put on a spotlight, on display, on exhibition as well, showing their goods. And so the fact that you could go from one building to another to experience completely different industries, completely different people, completely different cultures, yet here you are exposed to it, is pretty powerful, pretty amazing. And I don't think that, you know, the fact that we talk about the 1893 World's Fair so much, I don't think we'll ever actually do it justice, right? And so I think both of you are certainly results of that, as am I. And so that is, for me, a great intersection. Is there anything else that we should be talking about in terms of the Impressionists or in terms of beer that you guys want to discuss during that particular event?
I'm just looking at the way Manet makes the beer look, you know, with paint and painting the liquid. And it seems to be also something that is light filled and that captures the light and reflects out again. So it must have been a fun thing to play around with these new, very open brushwork, and trying to suggest that sort of the quiveriness, the excitement of modern life. And I'm thinking wine, you don't get that. You know, you get it with beer, because beer really does catch light, the amber, the wheat beers. But
There's
yeah.
definitely some things happening in the art world in terms of technique, in terms of approach.
Well, the approach is that you would, you know, this whole idea of compressing space into, so you've got lots of space compressed into one plane almost of, that was so unusual. And this casual, fragmented, just this little slice of life, this was highly unusual. I mean, Manet is the beginning of artists really almost, you know, you can't do this with photography. He's creating from different things he's seen, and he's pushing them all together. That's composite with this incredible brushwork. And yeah, I mean, they're very close up to us. We are with them at this table.
Right.
We're on the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of things happening at that time. Yeah. And I was thinking about the World's Fair, because they had all those different, the different countries, the different cultures. So I suppose each culture had its own beer. Is that what you were saying? So we'd have a Belgian beer, and we'd have, yeah. So that's interesting. And then it's interesting when you think that the building that we are in now, we took over after the fair closed. It was agreed with the city of Chicago that that building, which was the World Congress of Religions, would be the museum. So that was our third and final resting ground. So yeah, I mean, it was a galvanizing experience.
Sure. Gabriel, another reason that it made sense for me to ask you to be a part of this is not just because you went to the School of the Art Institute, but because I feel like Half Acre has really kind of set itself apart with a lot of the art that you guys put out. And that's on beer labels, that's on merchandise, that's on posters. I'm wondering where all of that has sort of stemmed from, how that all happened, and if you can tell us a little bit about how art is so integrated into Half Acre's culture.
Yeah, well, I've been pushing on it for a long time, and you know, it's something that I enjoy a great deal, and I always thought that it was paramount. It was you know, a sister goal of ours to be great image and to appeal to people visually. And you know, beer's been doing that for a long time, for you know, long before Half Acre. But maybe we would be able to think about it a little differently, or at least be able to put our own stamp on what it means to be a visual producer alongside a beer maker. So we've always been focused on an evolution of imagery as it relates to our beer and merchandise, and the various forms of communication that we put out. We don't really, we use a zillion different logos over the course of a single year. Very little has been constant over the last 15 or so years, and I think that's provided us with a ton of enjoyment, first and foremost, and I think it's created some sort of visual dialogue with people that either could just be, you know, candy to chew on, or something that people could think more actively about and to consider over time as it's evolved, and as people have, you know, enjoyed our beer. And yeah, that's always been a very exciting part of this for us.
I mean, it definitely is, I don't know if the word is surprising when I see something from you guys on Instagram, you know, or somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, Half Acre, all right, what's this new thing? Or you guys are just there's such a wide spectrum of visuals that you guys put out there, and it's just it's impressive. You make an impression. How about that?
That's great to hear. Yeah, I mean, it's probably you know, marketing 101 would say don't do this, but you know, and historically beer, certainly on larger industrial producers of beer have really like stamped visuals out and really tried to ingrain a certain set of shapes and colors and identity into you. And we sort of have done the opposite and tried to have this ongoing thing that, you know, hopefully maintains an attention. It has for us, and I have always very sincerely felt that as if we were enjoying our process, if we were active in our process as creators, that people would key into that. And I think largely that has been the case, though confusing at times probably. And, you know, if you see you know, our billboard, as they call it, on a shelf at a grocery store or a liquor store or wherever, you might not even know that 4 beers next to each other, they were all ours. But you know, it's worked for us, and I'm very happy to say that it has.
I'll just say that I really love the inconsistency.
We are consistent in being inconsistent. That is for sure.
Only because otherwise, you know, it'd get boring. Okay, so we are coming close to the end of our time, so I'm going to start taking some questions. Let's see here. Again, ask questions in the chat. We'll pull some things from Facebook as well. Gloria, did Bertha Palmer collect anything that wasn't great? Were there any clunkers in her collection?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have things in the basement. You know, we keep them because they're part of the legacy. But yeah, no, she collected. She liked Raffaelli, and we probably have the largest collection of Raffaelli in the United States in our basement. So yeah, there were lots. Yeah. But fortunately, her collecting of Impressionism was spot on, because she was buying not as the French did, since they didn't recognize Impressionism as their national style until the 1900s, but she bought really early. And so, yeah, like I said, the stacks of wheat were painted that year.
She was on it.
Yeah.
A follow-up question to that is, how does a work of art change from being contemporary to classic? And what might the role of a place like the Art Institute be in that process?
That's a really good question. I think being dead a long time helps. So our department kind of cuts off with Monet's death in 1926. So it's, yeah, there's if you haven't made it by then, you know, then you're not going to be classic if you're not on our walls. Yeah, so that's the easy answer.
Okay. Let's see here. This is, people are asking, this is the beer.
Yeah.
It's called Stacks of Wheat.
And there's the Art Institute logo.
Right. We've got, let me see here. We've got logos. Oh, and that's actually great. Another great point. The can does have the exhibition dates, which of course
are totally wrong. But it says it ends September 7th. And so it's kind of where it begins.
Yeah. What, do you have new dates for the exhibition?
September 3rd. And it goes until, if we open and if everything goes okay, we'll go until January 18th. So it'll still be the same span.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic.
But I don't know, as I was saying, Gabrielle, I don't know if there'll still be any cans left to be drinking during the exhibition.
That, yeah, Gabriel, that's the $1 million.
Well, its schedule is winding down rapidly, but we have great powers to make amazing things happen. So we should follow up and see how best to reignite things, just so, you know, we make the most of the experience.
I like that answer. I was about to start going to Half Acre and buying cases of it. I still might do that, but
that's fine too.
Especially now that you guys are opening your beer garden on Thursday, correct?
We are. Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, it's such a small deal to have our beer garden back open, just because it's something we've done for so long. But yeah, having it go away, and yeah, it feels very special to be able to welcome, because we've had no one drinking beer we've had any of these scenes here that that Gloria was nice enough to share. We haven't created any of these scenes in our breweries for some time now, and it's sad. It's sad to lose those things and to not be an igniter of that kind. So it'll be good to get people back this upcoming Thursday to, in a responsible manner, get people enjoying each other's company around some pints of beer again.
Yeah. I would definitely like to see that. And, you know, something else too about that space that you guys have created on Balmoral is that that's also been sort of this artistic sort of gathering place, whether it's not just with actual art, but with music or other sorts of genres, that is pretty special as well.
Yeah, I mean, beer has been a great attractor of all kinds of creativity, and you know, that's maybe one of beer's great successes. And today, the beer industry is more vibrant than ever. It looks like we're approaching 10,000 breweries in the United States, which when we started making beer, there were 1,500. So the evolution has been dramatic. Chicagoland is #1 in the country for brewery density. So Chicago is second to none. So yeah, with all those numbers, with all the creative people that have chosen to leave their career doing X, Y, and Z to make beer, we are a huge attractor of all types of creative forces. So that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, I never bought into that second city nonsense.
I don't think so.
Bill, oh yes, Bill is saying that the brewery is on Rasher, but yeah, it's called Half Acre Balmoral, because of the other.
It is on. Well, our address is Balmoral, but yeah, you access from Rasher. He is exactly correct and paying close attention.
These beer people, I tell you. I mean, they're watching your every move.
As they should.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. Other questions here. I'm trying to go back and forth from Facebook and Zoom here. Oh, Shannon's asking if there's any chance of having a Half Acre night at the Monet exhibit when it opens. I don't know about an actual Half Acre night. The Art Institute folks can tell us more about that. But remember, you're not allowed to drink in the galleries because of these precious pieces of art. That's just the way the museum world works. But you can you get the beer at the cafe or Terzo Piano or anywhere else in the museum? Does anyone know?
Well, that was always the hope, but.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be open. I'm not quite sure of the food services and drinking.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I have personally consumed Half Acre at the Art Institute before. So if all of that stuff is open, then I'm sure that Stacks of Wheat will definitely be there. Okay, here's your last call for questions as I'm sifting through some of these. Again, ask any questions about Monet, about Impressionism, about art, about Half Acre. Keep asking here. I'm trying to sift. Apologies while I look through 1,000 different messages. Gloria, is there a specific through line we should keep an eye out for when visiting Monet in Chicago? I don't know if you know what that means.
Not quite. Maybe I need to drink some little more of the Half Acre.
There's one question. Is there going to be a catalog for the exhibit?
Oh, yes, there is. And it's actually being printed. Should be available very soon, but it will definitely be available when we open the exhibition on September 3rd and maybe before that. It's it's being printed in Canada in a remote, probably with Stacks of Wheat. So we're good. We're good.
Okay. A couple more exhibition questions is the exhibit have some sort of a narrative arc? And the other question is, where will it be located in the museum?
Okay, yeah, so it's in the where we usually have our temporary large exhibitions. So if you saw Warhol or any of the larger ones, and it does have an arc. I mean, it's three stories really. It's the story of Chicago after the fire and the whole idea of collecting modern art and what was modern at the time, and the story of the collectors. It's the story of the collectors today too, and it's also, we've done a lot of research on our 33 paintings and our works on paper, and we have them online. It's an online scholarly catalog, and it's interactive, but people don't necessarily go to that. And so we've got monitors, we're going to do immersive experiences. So a lot of the things that I mentioned the fact that the grain stacks are not just something he did a la prima, that he actually went back in the studio and redid them. Some of those discoveries are going to be in the exhibition. The information will be embedded with the exhibition, which is chronological. It'll be chronological.
Awesome. Okay. I'm sure the Art Institute will have some events around Monet in Chicago. I'm guessing the best place to look would be your website.
Yes, I think we're going to be Zooming a lot. I don't see us having a major event where we're, shoulder to shoulder. I think that if we close in January, I don't know what kind of a in-house event we'll be having, but.
Sure. I always say to everyone, just go to the websites. They should give you all the information possible. I am thrilled that we were able to do this, you two. This whole collaboration has been a real honor, a real treat, to talk about Impressionist paintings and a specific and very important artist in Chicago. Really kind of just tugged all the heartstrings, and having a beer be a part of it, tugged the very last one. So it was really, really special. I want to thank you both for not only being here, but for being part of this important partnership, and being able to not only have stacks of wheat available in Chicago, but Gabriel, it's all over the country, right?
It's in a good chunk of places around the country. Yeah, not quite the entire country, but some, New York and Philadelphia and Denver and San Francisco. So yeah, we hit a lot of the high spots for sure.
Yeah. So for those of you who are logging in from Chicago and are Chicagoans, you have been well represented. Your cultural institutions, your beer makers. That was exciting for me too, to get all of this and our logos out there into the U.S. Gloria, chair of the European Painting and Sculpture at the Art Institute of Chicago, and the David and Mary Winton Green curator. Gabriel Magliaro, founder and maker of all these great things at Half Acre Beer Company, and part of the Brewseum board. Thank you both very much for your time, your knowledge, your creativity, your input. This is awesome. Keep drinking stacks of wheat. Get to the Art Institute when you can. Support all of your cultural organizations, including the Chicago Brewseum. Go to websites for more information. And next week, we will be talking about food, beverage, and identity in New Orleans. Join us with Liz Williams, the Executive Director of the Southern Food and Beverage Museum. For more information, go to chicagobrewseum.org. And thank you finally all to you who came tonight to join us and being here and supporting all of these great Chicago organizations. We'll catch you next time. Thank you very much. Night.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Liz. Cheers.
Thanks, Liz.